The wrestling world exploded when CM Punk delivered what appeared to be a stiff shot to USO during their recent encounter, and the truth behind this receipt is far more complex than anyone initially realized. What happened in that ring wasn't just another case of wrestlers getting rough with each other, but rather a culmination of backstage politics, personal pride, and the unwritten rules that govern professional wrestling. Before we dive deep into this controversy, make sure you hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss what happens next in this unfolding drama. The incident occurred during a match that had the entire WWE Universe on the edge of their seats. CM Punk and USO were tearing the house down when suddenly, Punk threw a strike that looked way too real. USO's head snapped back in a way that made everyone watching wince, and the cameras caught the immediate reaction on his face. This wasn't the choreographed violence fans are used to seeing. This was something different, something that carried weight beyond the scripted narrative. To understand why Punk did what he did, we need to go back several weeks to an incident that happened behind the curtain. During a scheduled segment, USO reportedly went off script and threw a punch that connected harder than it should have. Wrestling is all about trust between performers, and when someone breaks that trust, it creates tension that can simmer for weeks or even months. Punk, being the veteran he is, didn't immediately retaliate. He waited, calculated, and planned his response. The wrestling business operates on a code that outsiders rarely understand. When someone stiffs you in the ring, meaning they hit you harder than necessary, tradition dictates that you have the right to give them a receipt. This isn't about being petty or vengeful. It's about maintaining respect and letting your opponent know that you won't be taken advantage of. Punk is old school in every sense of the term, and he wasn't about to let this slide without addressing it properly. Sources close to the situation revealed that Punk actually approached USO backstage after the initial incident. He didn't go in hot or start a confrontation. Instead, he simply asked if the stiff shot was intentional or accidental. USO reportedly brushed it off, claiming it was just the heat of the moment and that these things happen. Punk nodded, said nothing more, and walked away. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. What made matters worse was that word spread throughout the locker room. Other wrestlers started talking about the incident, and some sided with USO while others understood where Punk was coming from. The locker room became divided, and management had to step in to prevent the situation from escalating further. Triple H himself called a meeting with both men, trying to smooth things over and ensure that their professional relationship wouldn't affect the product on television. During that meeting, Punk made it clear that he wasn't going to let this affect his work. He's a professional who understands that the show comes first. However, he also made it known that in the wrestling business, actions have consequences. Triple H, having been a wrestler himself for decades, understood exactly what Punk meant. He didn't forbid Punk from giving a receipt, but he did ask that it be done in a controlled manner that wouldn't injure anyone or derail storylines. The match where Punk delivered his receipt was carefully planned by both men. Yes, you read that right. USO actually agreed to take the shot. This might seem contradictory, but it's how things work in professional wrestling. By agreeing to take the receipt, USO was showing respect for the business and acknowledging that he had crossed a line. It was his way of making things right and restoring balance to their working relationship. When the moment came, Punk didn't hold back completely, but he also didn't try to genuinely hurt USO. The shot was stiff enough to make a point but controlled enough to keep everyone safe. USO took it like a professional, continued the match, and both men finished their segment exactly as planned. Backstage afterward, they shook hands and the issue was considered resolved. This is how veterans handle conflict in the wrestling business. What's fascinating about this entire situation is how it reflects the changing nature of professional wrestling. In the past, receipts were common and often led to real fights backstage. Wrestlers would settle their differences with their fists, and management rarely intervened. Today's wrestling landscape is different. With social media, constant surveillance, and a more corporate environment, these old-school methods of conflict resolution are becoming rare. Punk represents a dying breed of wrestler who still adheres to these traditional codes. He came up in the independent circuit where respect was earned through performance and toughness. He worked in promotions where if you couldn't handle yourself in the ring, you wouldn't last long. That mentality shaped him into the performer he is today, someone who demands excellence from himself and his opponents. USO, on the other hand, is a product of the modern WWE system. He's been with the company for over a decade and has grown up in an environment where things are more structured and controlled. His initial stiff shot to Punk wasn't born from disrespect but rather from getting caught up in the moment during an intense segment. He's passionate about his work and sometimes that passion translates into working a bit too snug. The generational difference between these two performers is at the heart of this story. Punk sees wrestling through the lens of someone who fought his way to the top against all odds. He had to prove himself repeatedly, often to people who didn't believe in him. USO, while incredibly talented, has always had the backing of WWE and his legendary family name. Neither approach is wrong, but they represent different philosophies about how the business should work. What really set Punk off wasn't just the initial stiff shot, it was USO's reaction afterward when confronted about it. In Punk's mind, if you make a mistake in the ring, you own it. You apologize, you make it right, and you move on. The fact that USO seemed dismissive about it triggered something in Punk that went beyond just this one incident. It brought back memories of other times in his career when he felt disrespected or undervalued. The backstage environment in WWE has been evolving under Triple H's leadership. He's trying to create a locker room where veterans and younger talent can coexist and learn from each other. However, moments like this expose the friction that can occur when different generations collide. Triple H handled this situation perfectly by allowing both men to resolve it on their terms while ensuring it didn't spiral out of control. What makes this story even more intriguing is the timing. Punk's return to WWE has been one of the biggest stories in wrestling over the past year. His departure from AEW was controversial, and many wondered if he could reintegrate into WWE's locker room without causing problems. This incident with USO was his first real test, and how he handled it would determine how the rest of the roster viewed him moving forward. By handling the situation according to the traditional wrestling code, Punk actually earned more respect from the locker room. Veterans appreciated that he didn't go to management first or try to get USO in trouble. Younger wrestlers learned an important lesson about accountability and consequences. Even USO gained respect for how he handled receiving the receipt and not letting his ego get in the way of resolving the issue properly. The match itself was fantastic despite the underlying tension. Both men worked hard to give the audience an incredible performance, proving that personal issues don't have to interfere with professional obligations. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and the physical intensity added an extra layer of realism that fans responded to positively. Nobody watching at home knew about the receipt except for the most eagle-eyed observers who noticed that one particular strike looked a bit different. In the weeks following the incident, Punk and USO actually developed a mutual respect for each other. They've been seen talking backstage, discussing matches, and even working out together. What could have been a situation that divided the locker room and created ongoing problems instead became a bonding experience. This is the best possible outcome for everyone involved, including WWE management and the fans who get to see both performers at their best. The wrestling business has always been filled with these kinds of stories. Receipts, locker room confrontations, and backstage politics are all part of the fabric that makes professional wrestling unique. While some fans prefer to maintain the illusion that everything is perfectly choreographed and friendly, the reality is that wrestling is a physical business where emotions run high and conflicts inevitably arise. How those conflicts are handled separates professionals from amateurs. What Punk did wasn't about revenge or trying to hurt USO. It was about maintaining the standards and respect that professional wrestling is built upon. In a business where your safety depends on trusting your opponent, you can't allow people to be careless or reckless without consequences. The receipt served as a reminder to USO and everyone watching that actions have consequences and that the old codes still matter to some people. This incident also highlights CM Punk's role as a locker room leader. Whether he wants that responsibility or not, his experience and reputation give him influence over younger wrestlers. By handling this situation the way he did, he set an example for how conflicts should be addressed. He didn't run to management, he didn't blast USO on social media, and he didn't try to sabotage his career. He handled it man-to-man, in the ring, the way wrestlers have done for generations. The fact that this story leaked to the wrestling media shows how difficult it is to keep anything secret in today's environment. Multiple sources reported different versions of what happened, with some exaggerating the severity of the receipt and others downplaying it completely. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in the middle. What's certain is that both men handled themselves professionally and the situation never escalated beyond that one controlled moment in the ring. Looking at the bigger picture, this incident represents a teaching moment for the entire WWE roster. It demonstrated that the old traditions still have value and that mutual respect between performers is essential. It showed that conflicts can be resolved without creating lasting animosity or affecting the product. Most importantly, it proved that veterans like CM Punk still have important knowledge to pass down to the next generation of wrestlers. The relationship between Punk and USO moving forward will be interesting to watch. They've established a foundation of mutual respect that could lead to more collaborations in the future. WWE Creative has taken notice of their chemistry, and there's talk of potentially pairing them together in some capacity down the line. What started as a contentious situation has evolved into an opportunity for both men to elevate each other's careers. Professional wrestling thrives on these real-life tensions that occasionally bleed into the on-screen product. Fans can sense when there's genuine emotion behind the action, and it makes everything feel more authentic. The Punk and USO situation added an extra layer of intrigue to their interactions, even if most viewers didn't know the full story. That's the magic of wrestling, where the line between reality and fiction is constantly blurred. As we wrap up this deep dive into what really happened between CM Punk and USO, it's clear that the receipt was about more than just one stiff shot. It was about upholding the traditions of professional wrestling, establishing respect, and handling conflict in a way that honors the business. Both men came out of this situation with their reputations intact, and the locker room is better for having witnessed how veterans handle these issues. If you enjoyed learning the real story behind this wrestling controversy and want more insider perspectives on what happens behind the curtain, make sure you subscribe to stay updated on all the latest developments in the wrestling world.